We recording?
Yes, sir.
Notice is hereby given that the Lago Vista City Council is holding a regular meeting on Thursday, August 16th, 2018, beginning at 6:30 p.m. in the City Council chambers at City Hall, 5803 Thunderbird, Lago Vista, Texas, as prescribed by VTCA Government Code Section 551.041 to consider the following agenda items. Items do not have to be taken in the same order as shown in the meeting notice. Sandra, please note that all of our council members are here. We also have, in addition, Josh, yourself, Dave, our Chief Danny, Star's back here. I believe that's it, because Eric and Roy and Chris have left. Is that everybody? All right. And Aaron are legal. So if you would, we have with us tonight Pastor Dale Chrisman from Trinity Anglican Church. If y'all would, please join me and for the invocation, and then we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. Lord, thank you for this beautiful day and evening, and thank you for the opportunity to gather in a safe place to discuss business. Father, we ask your blessing on this group. We ask your blessings especially on these council persons. We ask you to guide them tonight, that they do your will and not their own. Father, we pray for protection and safety for the public safety officers, the firemen, the policemen who guard us day and night. And Lord, we give you thanks that you have allowed us to live in such a beautiful area and participate in the things that we can change and the things we can improve on. Father, we give you thanks in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you would remain standing for a special presentation. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jenny. Happy birthday to you. You can now sit down. Happy birthday, G.
You're gonna ask him?
All right, citizen comment. In accordance with the Open Meetings Act, council is prohibited from acting or discussing, other than factual responses to specific questions, any items not on the agenda. I have no one signed up. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the council on any topic other than what's on the agenda? All right, hearing none, we will go into items of community interest. Pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.0415, the City Council may report on any of the following items: A, expressions of thanks, gratitude, and condolences; B, information regarding holiday schedules; C, recognition of individuals and proclamations; D, reminders regarding City Council events; E, reminders regarding community events; F, health and safety announcements. I do have one. My Young Families Advisory Group is hosting a breakfast, back to school breakfast this Saturday morning at 9 o'clock at Bar K. For those of you out there listening, this is for my young families that have school age and younger children that have busy lives and don't seem to attend council meetings or committee meetings. Or this is an outreach program that I have started, and they will be hosting a breakfast and trying to reach out. So those of you who are young families with kids, please come to Parquet Park, 9 o'clock Saturday morning. Does anybody else have anything under this topic?
Mr. Mayor, the Lago Vista Lions Club are going to be having a pancake breakfast on the 25th of the month in Jonestown at the fire station. Pancakes, bacon, drinks, $6 for adults, $4 for kids. We hope that citizens would come out and support that.
So we don't have any council events prior to, what is that, September 6th? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Yes, September 6th. It's the first Thursday. All right, well, if that's everything, we'll go into our public hearings. Number one, the Lago Vista City Council will hold a public hearing to consider ordinance 18-08-16-01, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lago Vista, Texas, amending the official zoning map by rezoning Silver Text subdivision Lot 1 at 4712 Loman Ford Road from the TR1 temporary restricted zoning designation district to the C2 commercial large-scale district, providing for related matters. And I open the public hearing at 6:37 p.m. And we will start with, was this something you had already opened?
Yeah, it was open from the
Okay,
last
I'm
meeting.
sorry. So this is continued to be open. It's already open. You can strike that I opened it at 6:37 because it's already open.
And we'll need to close.
All right, so staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is basically the annexation petition that has been in front of you off and on for well over a month, it seems like. As you're aware, that everything comes in automatically according to our ordinance as that TR1 temporary designation. This is simply the permanent zoning that they're asking for that is consistent with both the use that they're proposing and the recommendations of the comprehensive master plan. Are there any questions?
Questions?
I think the thing I put in your packet, even though the development plan is in the early stages, what I put in your packet was the landscaping plan that kind of shows what I think is an extraordinary effort to preserve trees.
All right. Okay, if I have no questions from council members, anyone out in the audience? Are y'all aware of which property this is? Does anybody not know what property this is?
This is the corner of Loman Ford Road, the north, I would call it the northwest corner of Loman Ford Road and Boggy Ford, right there where the new traffic signal's going in.
Is there intent only to put in 3 buildings on that lot?
Yes, ma'am. That's pretty much it. There was some discussion about whether they were going to subdivide it in more than one lot. But certainly it can accommodate more, but I think the traffic impact analysis, which is calling for a right turn lane on the Boggy Ford, and what you're seeing there in terms of where the driveway is and the improvements on that landscaping plan, that does not reflect that, but that is already in the discussion and it has been determined, and their more recent drawings reflect that. And that will be, by the way, that entry will be right in, right out only, and far enough back so that it doesn't interfere with that right turn lane.
Sort of where you see the division of the parking spaces on there?
Will there be any entrance or exit off of Boggy?
I believe there is intended to be one, yes.
Okay.
That's basically the way you go back the other direction, is exit on Boggy, take the left-hand turn where the signal's going to be.
Got it.
We make sure that they put some speed bumps or something so people don't cut through their parking lots.
That might be nice, but hopefully the trees and, and all that in the parking lot is heavily landscaped. That has a tendency to slow traffic down. And the slower it is, the less likely they are to use that as a cut through.
I don't think people do that anyway. All right.
I've never done that, actually.
The public has no questions. I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing at 6:40 p.m. Council have any discussion? Then I am open for action.
Mr. Mayor, I recommend that we accept the ordinance 18-08-16-01, ordinance of the City Council, City of Lago Vista, Texas, amending the official zoning map by rezoning Silvertex subdivision, Lot 1, what is 4712 Loman Ford Road, from the TR1 Temporary Restricted Zone Designation District to the C2 Commercial Large Scale District, and providing for related matters.
I'll second that.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, the motion carries unanimous. Number 2, the Lago Vista City Council holding a public hearing and consider ordinance number 18-08-16-02, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lago Vista, Texas, amending the official zoning map by rezoning approximately 7.743 acres known as Lot 2, Block D of the Hollows Phase 2D subdivision from the current Planned Development District to a Planned Development District that modifies the development regulations applicable to this specific lot to be known as the Discover Center site within the Hollows PDD and provide for related matters. This public hearing is also already open.
Yeah.
So, staff presentation.
You will probably have more than this one amendment to the Hollows as development goes. That's yet to be determined. It may simply be re-subdivisions that we encounter. But the first one deals with a tract that was previously not designated. It was kind of ambiguous in the existing ordinance. It said it would be determined whether it was going to be commercial or residential in the future. That designation, of course, didn't really occur on the plats. I guess you could argue that it's therefore by default commercial, but that was more of an omission than it was an intent. What they have now is a very specific intent to proceed with the development of what they're calling this tract or very large lot near the entry and turning it into the Discovery Center. I think the idea is that it will initially include a sales office that you see depicted. That's modular construction. Our existing ordinance limits modular construction on a temporary basis only when that designation is to be as a real estate sales office. It presumes, I think, that you would have something more akin to what you and I would consider a job shack, and that therefore it would be limited to 1 year's duration and be replaced by a model home. I think they intend this to stay there a little bit longer than that and perhaps be converted to a different use afterwards. Once again, any other use would be allowed by our ordinance as it exists today regardless of this. But nonetheless, it was warranted, if you will, to get something more specific on this particular property before they use this thing, because it's not really designated in the current PD. And what you have here towards the end of your packet is a proposal for mixed use and full development of this lot that might include things like the POA office, some office type uses, as well as potentially some detached or attached single family residences. And you'll see a depiction there, but initially the idea and what they've already proposed in terms of the permit applications is simply the parking and the utilization of the what they call the Discovery Center, which is initially going to be the real estate sales office. And you'll see both a drawing of that as well as samples of actual construction of other similar buildings made by the same manufacturer.
All right, questions from council?
Any additional complaints favorable or unfavorable toward this development?
No, sir. We didn't draw a single comment that I'm aware of either way
Okay.
with the notification, so.
Anyone else? All right, anybody from the audience that cares to address this public hearing? All right, hearing none, I will go ahead and close the public hearing on this one at 6:46 p.m. And council discussion, if not, I'm open for action.
Mayor, I'd like to propose that we adapt ordinance number 18-08-16-02.
I'll second that.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion carries unanimous. Number 3, public hearing. Pursuant to the Texas Local Government Code, Chapter 102, notice is hereby given that the City Council of the City of Lago Vista, Texas, is conducting a public hearing to receive citizen comments and views regarding the proposed City of Lago Vista budget for the fiscal year 2018-2019, commencing October 1, 2018, and ending September 30, 2019. Discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding a vote on adoption of a proposal to set a 2018 tax rate of 0.65 for the City of Lago Vista and schedule public hearings and take necessary action. If adopted by this Lago Vista City Council, the fiscal year 2018-2019 budget will raise more total property taxes than last year's budget by an estimated $792,625.78, or 15.1524%. And of this amount, $357,754 is tax revenue to be raised from new property added to the tax rolls in January of 2017. A copy of the proposed budget is available for viewing between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday through Thursday at the Lago Vista City Hall, 5803 Thunderbird, the Lago Vista Library at the Lago Vista Public Library, 5803 Thunderbird, Suite 40, Lago Vista, Texas 78645, and may be found on the city's website at lagovistatexas.org. And I will open the public hearing at 6:48 p.m. And do we have a staff presentation on this one?
Mayor, I'd like to point out that this is an extra public hearing. This is not required by the state. What we chose to do is to have the public hearing on this agenda as well as the next 2 agendas so that we give plenty of people the opportunity and the reminder that we are in a budget process now. If you have any comments, please come out. The concern is always that people may not be aware that we're going through a budget process. They may not be aware that there's a public hearing and a time to make formal comments. So just having you read all that allows that it was said, seen over YouTube, and it'll go into the minutes, and hopefully people have comments next month as you consider the budget.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I would just say that, just want to remind everybody again that this actually constitutes 0 change in our current tax rate year over year.
Right, which is how many years now? 6?
6 years.
6 years we've remained level at 0.65. Any other from council? All right. Citizens, do y'all have any questions on the tax rate at 0.65 per 100? All right. Hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing at 6:50 p.m. All right, consent agenda. All matters listed under consent agenda are to be considered routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There will not be separate discussion on these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. Number 4, approval of the following minutes: the July 19th, 2018 special call budget meeting minutes, July 19, 2018 regular meeting minutes.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Sandra, I'm going to abstain because I was not at that meeting. Hearing no more discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, minutes have been approved, unanimous. Discussion items. Discussion only of a potential future ordinance for a zoning district change from PDD, Planned Development District, to C2, Commercial Large Scale, for a proposed printing facility located at 6601 Panorama Ridge, ABS 348, Survey 538 Hensley, W, ACR acres 7.453.
Mr. Mayor, before we begin this discussion, upon my questioning and from advice from legal counsel, I am going to recuse myself from any discussion or vote concerning the property at 6601 Panoramic Ridge. The reason is my daughter is employed by the applicant. I have filed the appropriate paperwork with the city secretary.
All right, thank you, sir. And staff presentation.
A little background first. This one is a zoning case that is a little bit out of sequence, but what happened was the application was turned in a timely manner, although it was fairly near the deadline, and as a result, there was a flaw in the coordination of the advertisement. So basically, that meant they were delayed almost a full month before going in front of P&Z. In order to minimize that delay, the city manager recommended, and I thought it was an excellent idea, suggested that we have the discussion sandwiched around the P&Z meeting so that would happen, and that before you had to actually take a vote, you would have the public hearing on this matter at your next meeting. I guess it's no longer a secret who the ultimate user of this site's going to be, but it is a local printing facility that has simply outgrown their current location and is shopping for a new one. The existing property is Zone PD, which has kind of a myriad and I've put that existing PDD in your packet. As you've probably heard from me in the past, the expectation for PDD applications going forward is that they will be much more explicit than this. And this would not get a favorable recommendation from the staff going forward unless it was more explicit. In many ways, this offers an opportunity for correction. After determining and evaluating whether they wanted to develop under a new PDD, they seem to be fine with the C2 development standards, which seems to be a pretty good proposal for this property. The only real concern is one that they already expressed themselves that they're sensitive to, and that's to protect the adjacent residential uses to the west. And I'll give you an example of that. They're already talking with the city about sharing driveway access so that traffic doesn't go deep into the neighborhood. The same sort of sensitivity in those discussions will occur on the design to make sure that, anything that faces that neighborhood is screened and buffered appropriately. So, one thing about this property, the view over Loman Ford is of some fairly industrial type uses. So you have a kind of a conflict there, and this seems to be an appropriate use that might accommodate, that might desire this kind of site, but also be able to accommodate the needed buffer with the neighborhood behind it. I think it's a good fit. Yes, ma'am.
So I have two questions. The first one is, I believe, if I remember correctly, in the comprehensive long-term plan, that this corridor we had envisioned as
C2.
being commercial.
Yes.
Okay. And does the C2, if I think that the owner is who I think it is, does that give them enough access to light industrial type activities like a printing press? Does C2 cover that?
It does, but I'll be honest with you, there are, in our current zoning ordinances, there are processes that are very close to what you might call light industrial that are allowed in the C2.
Right.
And no-to-mean is a perfect example of that.
I just wanted to make sure that they were covered for the activities that they did.
But I'll be honest with you, the discussion with both the owner as well as the design team, printers are not, that's not the kind of the nature of their business anymore.
Okay.
It's changed quite a bit over the last decade. Once upon a time, printers, had 18-wheelers coming to their property all the time, delivering massive rolls of paper, and everything was printed, but now everything's digital and quite different. Typically, you might, half of probably what they do is delivered over the internet in all likelihood. It's just the nature of the beast has changed that rapidly. So it's a stretch to call it a manufacturing facility, in my opinion.
Okay.
But they're here. And Mr. Smith might even be able to tell you about the nature of their operation if you ask him.
All right,
I think everybody up here's used their services at one time or another, like during in November.
so would the applicant like to address council? I mean, you don't have to, I'm just,
Thank you for having me here. To answer your question about the C2, we're already C2.
Oh, okay.
We fall under C2.
And you're covered.
So that kind of fixes that problem there. I just want to thank all of you for giving us the opportunity to continue to grow here. Every one of your faces is familiar. I've printed campaign signs for everybody but one. And
gosh, we
thank
could
you.
run for it. All right, thank you, Chad. All right, so we're in discussion. Does anybody
Well,
have
I'm very
any more
much,
questions? Or?
Mr. Mayor, I'm very much in favor of this company being up on the ridge there. I like the fact that he's been in the neighborhood and he's been part of the community and he knows Lago very well. And I think he'll fit quite well up there.
Yeah, the owner and this business have been continually supportive of our school district, of our city activities. When you think about the trash offs and the different things that they've done to help support this community, I'd love to see them continue to grow here.
Well, I would also like to express my thanks in that they're choosing to stay in Lago Vista, and they have selected a piece of property that we have attempted, or the current owner has attempted to do something with for about 3 years now. And this corridor is going, I think this is going to go a long way in bringing attention to Lago Vista and our retail. I think this is going to be a big boost in our retail growth and hopefully get that corridor. This may be the business that kickstarts that corridor going. So, yes, I'm looking forward to this. As he explained, this has got to go to planning and zoning first. So it was just put on here so we could actually discuss it and not be blindsided and having to take a vote on the September 6th meeting. A little bit out of order, but because of the necessity, we're discussing, it'll go to planning and zoning next Thursday, is that correct?
Yeah, the
It is the
23rd.
23rd,
Yes.
and then that September 6th, it's right back to us. We will hold our public hearing, and then we'll close the public hearing and take the vote that night.
Have notifications gone out to the, okay. But, and anything come back yet, or?
Well, I've had one phone call and one written comment saying, please protect the neighborhood. But these guys, I didn't have to ask them, they offered that.
Right.
They knew that was an issue.
Mayor, for our viewing audience, would it be appropriate to identify the applicant?
The business.
Oh, yeah, Vistago,
It's in your packet.
let me see, how do you get it written?
Vistago.
Formerly known as.
Do I?
Formerly known as.
I want to make sure I got it right. Where's the application? Okay, well, Vistago Print, formerly known as Dirt Cheap Signs, or was it Dirt Cheap? It was Dirt Cheap Signs.
Cheap
wasn't it?
Signs, it was.
Yeah, so Vistago now is the business looking at developing on this piece of property, Panorama Ridge and Loman Ford.
I don't know that you need the Chamber of Commerce endorsement, but I do want to extend that Chad has been a wonderful, long-term member of the Chamber of Commerce, been very supportive in many banners for our chamber events, and also a top employer in our area, and expanding his area expands jobs in our area. So I see all good reasons why we should approve this move.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Casey, did you have your hand up? Did you want to say something?
I was just gonna say that, as we go through the design
Casey?
process of this property.
Casey, you need to come back there.
Yeah, we're on TV now, Doug, so you have to come to the microphone.
Doug Casey, Casey Building Company. As we go through the design process with this site development, we'll see to it that the buffer zones are you'll be able to see on the plans how we are addressing the concerns of anyone on Panorama.
Will the building be more towards the Loman side of the property, or in the middle? What's the intent?
We're doing our soils investigation right now, just to verify that everything is what I think it is, which is solid rock, which gives us a lot of opportunities. There's one area that we want to make sure there's no fill-in that will kind of determine overall exactly where the building will be placed.
Got it.
Just make sure you take advantage of that view up there on the top of the ridge.
We want Chad's office as far away from that view as possible. He needs to stay working.
I'd say, when I've been in there, they don't have time to look out the windows.
No.
Sir.
Mr. Mayor, could I say something too?
Yes, sir.
I just placed an order for 4 banners today with Vistago, and I'm head of the Ministerial Alliance out here, and I want to say that they've done a lot of printing for a lot of the churches and done a fine job, and we too want to support that. And as someone whose building was recently finished by Doug Casey, I can assure you that it'll be done well. So I would add an endorsement to that.
It's a love fest.
Thank you, sir. All right. So, anything else? Are we ready to go to the next one? Sir, would you like to rejoin us?
He said no.
You just stay down there. Don't sweat off my back. All right, number 6, discussion only of a potential ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lago Vista, Texas, amending Section 3.113 of Chapter 3 and Section 20 of Chapter 14 of the Lago Vista Code of Ordinances and providing for related matters. All right, number 6, we have our staff presentation.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Boyd?
This was a request or a concern, if you will, is where it initiated by members of the Planning and Zoning Commission that there were temporary COs being issued for single-family residences without the landscaping already being in place. And anyway, to make a long story short, I had a discussion with the staff to investigate pursuant to the complaint, and it was acknowledged that this was a very common practice for a large variety of reasons. Often, people did not want their contractors putting in the landscaping, whether it was to avoid them paying profit and overhead of the contractor, to make sure that the house was finished, make sure the equipment was off the site. In some cases, they wanted to hire and supervise that work themselves. In some cases, they wanted to actually do the work themselves. There's also issues, and I understand it's maybe less here in Texas than it is in other parts of the country, but there is such a thing as a planting season, and every now and then you have the unfortunate occasion to simply, be ready with the building in a time where it's not appropriate to plant the particular things you're trying to plant. Anyway, to make a long story short, the staff recommended that instead, and John acknowledged, once upon a time when we were building a handful of houses a year, this was a common practice and he was able to effectively follow up on his own. Now that we're building, closer to 300 houses a year, he admits that he's not necessarily doing the following up that he should have, and there might have been more extensive delays because of his inability to pay that much attention to simple landscaping issues. The staff made a recommendation that we thought would solve the problem, and that was to simply, when somebody made the request for a temporary CO, to immediately turn it over to code enforcement. And this would sort of the normal sort of thing. Greg, when he has a notice of a complaint, typically talks with the property owner, gets a commitment about how long they need to, eliminate the violation and to treat it as such. And if they don't do what they promised to do, then he cites them to court. This did not impress planning and zoning, and they instead recommended an ordinance change that basically eliminated the current discretion of the city staff to issue temporary COs and suggested it can only be done for landscaping for a period of up to 30 days following a stage 4 emergency drought condition. And that everybody else is going to have the landscaping in place before they occupy the building or close on their loan. Now, since I've been here, the only ones I've been directly involved in, of course, are commercial properties. And I can tell you that most of them got temporary COs because of lack of landscaping. That will not apply just to single-family residences. That'll apply to everybody. So that is the ordinance proposal we have in front of you. It changes not just the landscaping ordinance that's in Chapter 14. It changes some language that's in Building Code Chapter 3 about temporary COs.
Was it a unanimous decision by P&Z?
It was.
Okay.
I'm not so sure it was embraced by everyone. I think other people might have been satisfied with the other solution, but they felt that it did warrant some action of some sort.
Okay.
I think that was easily a unanimous decision, was that, expecting John to follow up on 300 houses was not practical. Now, I'll be honest with you, there are problems with the landscaping ordinance that probably need to be addressed, and some members were ready to address them now. And that might have been part of the complaint, was that, some of these things are things that are almost impossible to do. For example, if you have a lot that slopes 30%, the idea of having a sodded lawn is pretty difficult. And in fact, that part of the landscaping ordinance that has nothing to do with temporary COs. That's part is simply not being enforced. What we recommended was that because Councilmember Davila is pursuing the Scenic City Initiative, which will include an evaluation of the landscaping ordinance, I might add that tree preservation is something that in single-family residential districts is almost lip service. There's almost not such a thing as a tree preservation ordinance in single-family areas. That was one of the complaints, that they're clear-cutting the lots where single-family residents are going, and I hate to tell you, that's allowed almost by the zoning ordinance because there are just not that many protected trees that aren't excluded because it's too close to the house. So, and unlike commercial properties, which you could see with the Silvertex subdivision that you saw earlier, there's no requirement to replace those trees in a single-family lot. You cut down a 40-inch oak, it's just gone.
You can't replace those trees.
Well, I understand, but the commercial
Those are
ordinance
priceless
requires
trees.
you
Yeah.
if you cut down a protected tree because you have to replace it. There's no such requirement. The current landscaping ordinance is, a couple of Charlie Brown Christmas trees, as I call them, and 6 bushes, and you're done.
Well, this is great feedback, and I appreciate that the current status is not sustainable. But I think that what's been brought to us now is also not sustainable. I do not claim to be a master gardener in any sense, but I do like to get my hands dirty on the weekends. And there are quite a few months in Texas you can't plant. Largely the summer, doesn't matter. And so what you will end up, people could put thousands of dollars of landscaping in July, and you're going to have Charlie Brown Christmas trees.
Understand.
Because they won't live, no matter how much water you put on them.
And my sister's a landscape contractor.
Yeah.
She's always nagging me, you can't, this is the only month you can plant this.
This is the only, this time of year, the only thing you can do is pull weeds. Don't even think about putting anything in the ground. So I worry that this might have swung the other direction. And I would support your statement about going back and looking at the entire ordinance and writing it in a better way.
And I think both need to happen.
Yeah.
But like I said, the staff recommendation was for a policy that treats anybody that wants a temporary CO for landscaping, that we don't rely on the building inspector who's overworked, and instead rely on code enforcement who's out on the street every day.
Yeah. And but you were saying it removes some of the availability. It removes the availability for you guys to make the right decision at the desk at the time.
Yeah, I don't want to mention exactly, what temporary COs we've issued for commercial properties, because I imagine a lot of y'all have been to those.
Well, I don't want
Right.
to call out any specifics, but
Right.
if you can handle it right there and say, of course, everybody's building, trying to get their kids in school for a September start. So they're all going to move in July and August, right? I assume, looking at the builders in the line out here, that this is a huge crush time to finish housing, but you can't plant anything right now.
Well, and quite frankly, like I said, if you have a closing that's tight and the contractor still has equipment on the site, I personally wouldn't want landscaping installed under those conditions either. You're just asking for a problem.
I don't like taking away the ability for you to make the right decision right then and send out a code enforcer later and create additional.
Well, and once again, what we described is a very routine part of his process. The initial thing he does is negotiate exactly how much time they need to be compliant, and we don't see this as
in addition to the actual homeowner, this would have a huge effect on the builder.
Yeah.
Because the banks, the closing, everybody.
We may see.
No building in the summer.
This could potentially make it where we go 3 or 4 months with absolutely no building, and then we've got 9 months where now instead of 300 in 12 months, we got 300 trying to be built in 9 months.
I understand.
So.
You've got the ultimate hammer, not giving the CO until they've got it done, and I understand that viewpoint. How big is that hammer if you went the other direction and turned it over to code enforcement and allowed them in the home? Well, what are the ramifications to?
Ultimately, you're depending on how seriously the judge treats those kind of violations, obviously. I don't see why he would treat these as being something he would choose to ignore. Once again, part of the problem is you may have selective enforcement already going on because there are parts of the landscaping ordinance that simply doesn't fit our terrain.
Right. But what remedies would the judge have? I'm assuming some kind of fines?
Yeah, or give them additional time, that sort of thing, in case it might drag on for quite a while.
And that's my point.
That's the fear.
Yeah, there's not much of a hammer there.
I don't think we don't have a fee. Do we have a fee scheduled? A fee tied to this?
Well, there are fines associated with all zoning violations, and Erin can tell you her experience, and they're fairly hefty, and each day of violation is treated as a separate offense, but they aren't often collected in my experience. I don't know whether she has a different experience, but.
Well, we're pushing for compliance anyways.
Right, ultimately, what usually happens is that, you're happy with compliance, not a fine.
I'd love to see this brought forward with the idea of a little bit more flexibility, because you don't want to leave it out there for months on end. But you need to be reasonable and think about, if somebody moves in August, it might be September before it makes sense to start the
Well,
ground.
and once again, as opposed to other violations, okay, that we have, typically, the people that live in the house want landscaping. It's not like something they're refusing to do. It's simply a matter of timing and coordination. So the staff doesn't anticipate a problem with the policy as we proposed it, because we don't think it's similar to the violations that occasionally drag on. This isn't a nuisance, it's simply them needing better timing for doing what they want to do.
Mr. Mayor, I'm in support of what Roy and his committee has proposed as a temporary fix. I'm also in support of, Arch and the building committee are looking at chapter 3, and maybe they're have some amendments to what landscaping should look like on a house. And, I'm looking at chapter 14 and trying to sort out zoning from building codes and stuff like that. So we're both working on the same thing. And sitting in the P&Z meeting, I think this whole discussion was just generated from their frustration of seeing so many homes that didn't have any landscaping. There were a few homes where instead of landscaping, people just put down little pebbles on one side of the house and put nothing on the other side. So there were several members that were frustrated, and they kind of swayed the other members to say, we have to do something. So this kind of like is a quick jerk response to what they were feeling.
I feel it too. Somebody just clear cut a lot on my street, and every day when I drive home, I have to, say cookies and cream, because it just makes me mad. So I get the frustration. I just, we got to make sure we're not swinging back and forth too strong.
Right. And once again, we think part of the frustration is based on the landscaping ordinance being a little more lenient than it ought to be.
Right.
I mean, there's hardly such a thing as a protected tree on a residential lot. It's 13 feet, within 13 feet of where the building might go, and within 5 feet of anywhere there's any paving on the lot at all. So what's left?
But is that going to come from the building committee, or is that going to come from the P&Z? I say that's what we have to figure.
Mr. Brown was ready to start it that night.
I know.
And my recommendation was,
it really needs to be over there.
Well, we're about to have the Scenic City Initiative.
Right.
And they are going to comment on our landscaping ordinance.
Right.
I think very significantly, I might add.
Right.
And I would like to, and I requested, why don't we wait and get their written recommendations and then work from there?
Work from there.
Was kind of what the staff was thinking. And I did. I asked them, said, can you wait until we get those? Because otherwise we might be doing this twice.
Right.
And how lazy I am, so.
We call that efficient,
Well,
Roy.
it's fun the first time. It's not nearly as much fun when you do it twice.
Okay.
Any further discussion? All right, we'll go to number 7. Discuss and consider amending Article 9.800 Building Committee of Chapter 9 Personnel of the Lago Vista City Code to replace the Building Committee with a Building and Standards Commission.
Mayor, this item's been brought back to council. We've had a couple discussions that stemmed originally from the charter review process, and then we've presented this back to council for consideration. The item being considered is taking our existing building committee and replacing that committee with a Building and Standards Commission. At our previous meeting, our legal provided a breakdown of the differences between the two. The main item that we consider on the change is giving a regulatory authority to the Building and Standards Commission that would not currently exist for the Building Committee.
Mayor, that was the basis for the request to make the change of the building committee to become a commission, was to give them the regulatory authority that would be required to take action on denials by the building official and being able to handle appeals.
Mr. Mayor, I was wondering, have we looked into the qualifications of the individuals on the current building committee as to meeting the requirements that were expressed with going to a building commission?
We actually didn't have any specific requirements spelled out, but I can tell you that I've looked at the people that currently are on the building committee, and 3 of them are engineers, and 1 of them is a structural engineer. And I don't know that you can get any better people than that to serve on a commission like this.
But I thought the idea was that you wanted a broad breadth, like plumbers, electricians, structural engineers.
Attorneys.
And we do have an attorney and we do have a plumber that are currently on the building committee.
I thought the attorney was going to P and Z. I hate to bring up that painful subject to you.
It's already been done.
Exactly, it's my understanding it's been done.
Well, he might be able to be replaced by another attorney, or maybe we can talk him into serving on both.
Well, and I thought the other issue with this particular item was, did the Building and Standards Commission have more authority than the Building Committee and Board of Adjustment on their own? And I see there's a table in here trying to summarize that. There's a lot of legal gobbledygook in there, and I'm not going to say that I understand everything that's there. Can you give us a short summary of, is there additional powers being provided to that particular entity?
So similar to the level of authority that your zoning board of adjustment would have, your building standards commission would be a quasi-judicial body. They would have more authority than your building committee. Any appeals from this body would go to court, like from your zoning, your board of adjustment. And so they would have substantially more authority as a commission than they do as a committee. They function very similarly as your board of adjustment. They just hear different things. They're going to hear issues related to your building codes and variances from your and issues from your building official versus your board of adjustment hears your zoning issues.
So,
yes.
Different from planning and zoning, where planning and zoning makes a ruling, and if it's appealed, it goes to the Board of Adjustments.
Right.
So why does the building committee make a decision and also do the appeals, and not, why doesn't theirs go to the Board of Adjustments for appeals?
That's just not how it's set up. Board of Adjustment hears only those zoning cases, and that comes from statute.
Oh, okay.
It's statutory.
Okay.
And your Building Standards Commission, as it's laid out in your local government code, which is also statutory, has their limited jurisdiction.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
And so you mentioned that this Building and Standards Commission has significantly more authority, or has purview over more things. What are those things that it has that?
Right. The types of issues that they hear are very much the same as your building committee. However, issues that go in front of the building committee then would come before the council if it got appealed, versus the Building Standards Commission would have that quasi-judicial decision-making power.
Okay.
They wouldn't have to come to you after that.
And that would be the same judicial ability that the Board of Adjustment has.
Exactly. They function in very the same manner. They just hear different topics. They have different focus.
And so what's the advantage of having the Building and Standards Commission over just a building committee?
You don't have to hear the matters. They
It won't
they
come
are.
to us.
It won't have
They
to
will
come to you.
completely handle it.
Exactly.
But the flip side of that is that means, and I think we saw it in the paperwork we had last time, they have the ability to say that house needs to be destroyed, and it doesn't come to us, it doesn't go to any elected official, and the only place it can be appealed is court.
That's correct.
But that still exists currently anyway, if there's a problem with the building being substandard or anything like that. It would come to us to make a decision. So really, the decision is only a matter of, do we make the decision or does the commission make the decision?
That's exactly right.
But it also sounds like there's minor, or what I would consider lesser issues. Roy just referred to landscaping. Does a landscaping issue need to come to court, or could that be something that could go to council, right? If somebody doesn't want to have a sodded yard, right? Those are the types of things where we might create frustration for our citizens if we're trying to eliminate the ability for them to go to their council.
Yeah,
But the decision-making would just occur at the commission level.
And if the citizen disagreed, their only recourse is to go to court over what kind of bushes they want to put in
Which
their
would be
yard.
the same thing as if we denied.
So that's true, but it gives another layer for them to come over and say something without having to incur costs associated with attorney.
Well, again, I'm gonna restate what I said in an earlier meeting. The idea here is to separate things, issues that have to do with building and building codes, building regulations, away from zoning.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is to streamline the ordinances so that they deal with nothing but the issues having to center around building.
but is it possible that we do that, embodying that authority in the building committee, and appeals come to council versus creating a building and standards commission?
Right now, what the ordinance says is both building official appeals and zoning appeals both go to Board of Adjustment. The initial discussion was based on the fact that now that you have an active building committee with expertise in the building trades, wouldn't it be more appropriate for them to hear the building official appeals? But if that were to happen, you're just transferring something that goes to the Board of Adjustments now to a different committee. But right now, the Board of Adjustments is a final authority, okay? And the only remedy is district court. And the theory behind that is that the building code has turned them down once. You follow me? In theory, they've been heard once. I read the building code. I don't like what it says. I need to appeal that. So in essence, that's their second hearing already. And the same thing's true with the zoning appeals. You mentioned landscaping. If you want a variance from the landscaping ordinance, it's in Chapter 14. You go to the Board of Adjustments. If you're denied there, it's district court.
So it doesn't change anything, he just puts it in.
He's transferring it the only thing that's different is the property standard part of this. Right now, that's the code enforcement official's responsibility, and he cites them to court. That's not fair.
No, it's not.
Now that would be the responsibility of these guys. That's, as far as I'm concerned, the only thing that's simply not a shift that's kind of new. You're shifting it from a staff function.
So the only other question I would have then is that and maybe it's a city size issue, but in many cities, these commissions are elected officials, not appointed officials.
And where there's widespread blight, and I think there's a sound reason for that. When you have widespread blight and these decisions come up routinely, it's really a budget issue, because the bottom line is the reason these things are allowed to deteriorate to this level is because the property values aren't being supported. So when the municipality tears them down, okay, what you're going to do is file a lien, then you're going to have a tax interest or a lien interest in the property, and it's going to end up in your hands anyway. So you're going to be spending money that you're not going to recoup. And that's often the reason that those are handled by elected officials, because there's budget ramifications to doing that.
Yeah, my only concern is taking away the voice of the public.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. When
Yeah.
you are actually ordering demolitions often, it ends up being adjudicated, the city ends up cutting the grass and maintaining the property, and, you know, at best it goes in a tax sale. But I'm not so sure Lago Vista is that same situation, but that's why these things typically exist.
Roy,
Yes, sir.
what I'm hearing right now, if I have an issue with a building thing that I'm trying to fight the city on, as it stands right now, that is sent to the Board of Adjustments.
Correct.
They make their decision, and then the next level for them is court.
Right. And that is
So this would simply
shift.
just shift it over to the building committee, then it goes to court, but it's not gonna change the level
Right.
that a citizen has to go.
The primary difference is this language also appears in the charter, so it requires that charter amendment first. You know, the fact that it goes to Board of Adjustment.
We're not
that
actually
language-
taking anything away from anybody.
Right.
Yeah, but what I'm hearing is that right now, if this came up on a building,
It goes to Board of Adjustment.
it would go to the Board of Adjustments, and their decision
It's final.
leaves the citizen no alternative but to go to court.
Right. And that's
So
the same as a
this doesn't
variance.
change anything as far as what the citizen's options are through the process. It just simply sets up a different, more directed group to look at the issue.
And like variances from the zoning ordinance, they're intentionally difficult. It requires more votes, for example, to approve a variance under either case. And it's under the theory that, you know, the code itself has already turned them down once. So they in a lot of ways, the theory is they're already being heard a second time.
Well, I would love to see, as we go through this process, a definition of different skill sets that people should have, because I know I would not be qualified to sit on a board like this, right? I'm self-aware enough to say that. But I'd love to have a desired skill sets definition or something to guide future council members to help build this out.
Aaron, in the information you gave us, wasn't there a recommendation as far as the skill sets? Wasn't that part of what we got earlier?
But it's not in the ordinance that's listed here in the
Yeah,
package.
but I was thinking,
We have given a set of recommendations with regard to skill sets, but Councilmember Bland is correct in that it's not in the actual ordinance itself.
okay.
And it's not covered by statute, the recommendations for,
No, it's not covered by statute. You have the discretion to make those decisions.
And we don't have any requirements for the people that serve on the Board of Adjustment to have a particular skill set.
No.
And they have the same regulatory authority that we're looking for to be granted to the commission.
And understand, I mean, and perhaps if they're going to hear appeals that involve building codes, which are all about safety, maybe it's more important that, you know, zoning issues are intentionally done, you know, the theory behind them is you want lay citizens making those decisions. I'm not so sure that's really the standard you have for building code appeals, because they are technical in nature and they involve safety issues. Now, having said that, understand that they're extremely rare compared to zoning variance requests. I mean, I don't want to admit how long private sector career as an architect, I made one appeal. And they are extremely rare. Because the bottom line is the building code is there for a reason. In most cases, you comply with it. Typically, the appeal is based on the idea that, and they occur more frequently in existing building renovations, where the code requires you to maybe tear something out, and you can do something of equal safety, okay, that's less cost prohibitive. In fact, typically, what I did on my appeal, I said, look, I'll do something that's safer than this instead of making me tear something down that's perfectly good except for the 2 inches that the corridor was too narrow. I said, I'll give you sprinklers, I'll give you more exits, I'll give you whatever you want. Just don't make me tear down something that's perfectly okay.
And I'd like to add one other thing. One of the questions that came to my mind when we were going through this process was, we went through the anti-monotony initiative, which became an ordinance. The group of people, or the entity that ended up coming up with the standards and the parameters for that was the zoning, the planning and zoning people. And they were asking the same question, why are we having to come up with these parameters when it's clearly a building thing? And so the building commission could have laid out those parameters and maybe made them more stringent, things of that nature. And I think that the expertise would have been there, and I think they would have been happy to have tackled that issue. And so neither the Planning and Zoning Commission nor the Board of Adjustments really were prepared to do that. They reacted the best way that they could, and what we have now are the parameters that they set forward to make these different buildings that are being built in a cookie cutter manner different in some way. So again, I strongly support the idea of giving them final authority on those kinds of issues.
So this is just for discussion right now, so
Yes, sir.
if we want to move forward, then all we're asking to do tonight is give direction for them to go back and put the ordinance together and then bring that to us. And is there anything specific? You'd mentioned the qualifications of the, are we wanting that written into the actual ordinance, or? Because once they get there, then you can't really change it unless you change the ordinance again, but.
I think we should still have the same flexibility for naming the people to that commission that we currently have for naming the people to the Board of Adjustment.
So we have a set, like, desired qualifications, but not necessarily written in the ordinance itself?
Right, yeah. I mean, that's fair as far as I'm concerned.
Well, how would we do the desired qualifications and continue those forward over multiple generations of council without them being in the ordinance?
Could you say, use a language?
Suggested.
It is suggested, or
Yeah.
it is preferable
Right, like
that
that's,
individuals of this commission have a skill set that would fit into being
These
able to
categories.
determine the appropriate actions.
that would satisfy me. I don't know if you can do that, but
You certainly can. You can list the preferred qualifications of those. It wouldn't be a mandatory requirement. If you leave it open and loose and don't establish that, for example, we need 2 architects, we need 1 plumber, we need, if you wanted to be that prescriptive, you could. But if you want to maintain the flexibility, you could provide a list of preferred qualifications for persons who would be
Sure.
appointed for that, and just kind of provide your laundry list of folks.
I'll give context. I was born and raised in the Southeast, went to college in Louisiana, and this particular form of government was one of the most corrupt. Building commissions in Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana were some of the most corruptible pieces of non-elected officials. So it makes me very nervous. I'm not saying that would ever happen here, but I know that it can be done. And that's why I would love to put in some suggested abilities, right? So you don't have,
This is Texas.
This is Texas. Louisiana's different, I understand. But.
Well, and also, there were millions and millions of dollars involved in those
Yes.
deals.
Yeah,
And-
billions sometimes, so,
And
yeah.
it was directed a lot more to building substandard
Totally agree,
than
but
building standard. And I think, at least in what I'm reading in this, we're looking more at ensuring that there is a standard met
right, and that's
that
where.
is safe and appropriate. And so, just by the language of this ordinance, I think that we eliminate a lot of what your concerns are. And I used to live in East Texas. I remember all that. And I remember when it was a good old boy system that
Oh, yeah.
if you built a building, you had to give kickbacks to everybody that walked by the door. So
Yeah, so
but
yeah.
that is not,
But
that is not what this is talking about. That's not what
No, we
this
are
is
right
looking at. And I don't believe that that has relevance to this particular ordinance.
I don't either, but that's why I would just love to have a preferred skill set list.
And I think,
I don't think anybody would have any real problem with that.
yeah, I think that would be
That'd be appropriate.
it would be ideal if we could have an electrician, a plumber,
And we can
an
Structural
engineer,
engineer, yeah.
all that kind of thing. But on the other side of it, we have to be realistic. We're in a small community. We may not be able to choose that much.
That's true.
Of who's willing to volunteer for this commission. What we need is some people that can give information to other people. But the main thing that we need is to have a group of people that are in there trying to do the best thing they can for the city, ensuring that we have safe buildings.
Absolutely.
Right. And so as long as we had language in there that it would be preferred or desired that we have these certain skill sets, I don't think I would have any problem with this ordinance.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, one other thing that I would like to get some direction on from council this evening is in your current requirements, you referenced the 2012 set of codes, building code, fire code, all of those things. Do you want in this ordinance, would you want to update that to a more current version? Or do you want to leave that, have it remain with the 2012, reference the 2012?
We haven't adopted the new ones yet. Don't we
No.
have to adopt them first?
Yeah, right, and that's why I'm asking, do you want us to bring that to you at the same time?
Yeah, I think yes.
The building committee's addressing that.
I was gonna say,
Are
we
they
are
addressing
in
it?
the
Okay.
process. It hasn't quite
They
made
haven't
it
gotten
to
it.
us
Okay.
yet. But yes, we want to go with the most update version.
Okay, we'll let that be a separate item that the building commission committee brings to you. I don't want to mix apples and oranges. I just wanted to make sure that y'all recognize that this is how it's what it's currently referencing.
They're actually tackling the entirety of chapter pieces of that.
And they're working diligently at it.
Okay. All right, anything else? All right. Number 8, city managers' reports.
Thanks, Mayor. The only report we have in this section is to wrap up. There was 3 items we had left from our workshop earlier. One item that you had handed out to council for the workshop. I think we could hit that one first, if it's okay with you.
All right. It's really simple. I got this a couple months ago. I got buried on my desk, and I just found it. So I haven't really had a chance to discuss this with staff yet. But everybody has seen, I guess on Sundays when they do the Texas Country Reporter, the guy that travels around the state and does shows on different little towns. That's what this is. It's not the Texas Country Reporter, but that's basically what this is. It is a television show, and you can get anywhere from 20 to 1 hour segments done on your city. And it's broadcast. Right now, they're on 18 different channels in 14 different markets. It's a company out of San Antonio. And so I just wanted to bring this to y'all's attention because I don't know if this is something, I would think it would be something that would come out of our hot hotel occupancy, because this is purely directed towards tourism. I was on the phone with them today. So a television show of 20 minutes in length, $5,000. So I just wanted to present this with y'all. Y'all can go to yolotexas.com and watch. They have 48 episodes. They just started this year. They're out of San Antonio. They've done 48 episodes. Y'all can go and watch the kind of work that they do. And then we'll discuss this again at some point and see if this is something we might want to do for our city at some point, and whether.
Is it advertising, Aaron? Do you know if you pay for a show made about your city, hot tax can be done advertising of your city, but if you pay them to write a show, is that content or is that advertising? Just a question to bring up in the discussion. Is that your point?
I was just gonna recommend that if you do that show, it'd be nice to try and showcase that around Lago Fest.
Yes, yes, we've already discussed that.
Yeah.
But, and I don't know, it may not be hot tax. I was just,
It's not hot tax,
yeah.
advertising, not content, they're trying to sell you content.
Content.
Show. So I would want to clarify that, so I would think we would spend that money and then not.
Yeah.
Mayor, we'll follow up and answer that question, figure out the information.
Okay. So I didn't know if it needed, this was something that would have to be put in our budget, or if, you know, this could be a line item under our public information or our economic development or something like that. So I just wanted to bring this to y'all so y'all can go out and start watching the TV shows and see what y'all think.
Gotcha.
Great. We'll do that follow-up, Mayor, and we'll get some more information back, and then we'll send that out to council as part of our packet. The next item is, it was presented by Councilor, a marketing proposal right in line with what the mayor was talking about for the city. This is actually in your handouts that were stapled together. This is page 1. This was sent to us by Ms. Hughes of the Chamber with 3 possible options for marketing for next year. And one of the conversations that we've had is to consider that in the budget. This would be in addition to the allocation to the Chamber, but would provide for the tourtexas.com, Texas Highways Magazine, and Texas Event Calendar Magazine. I believe that Councilor Weatherly actually sent us an email on this as well.
Yes, I sat down and had a discussion with Lane. Previous meetings, we had brought up that we weren't sure exactly how much the city council was doing to try to advertise us and market us. I went and talked with Lane and asked her, what more could we do? And her proposal is before you. These are things that we could pay for with the hot tax. These are things that would not only have outreach in the near, close to us, but also across the state. One thing that is not on here and is also another possibility, and was something I would like to include in discussion. In 2016, an agreement was made with Spectrum TV, and we had a spot that was put on ESPN, ESPN2.
And it was a local cable line to promote the golf course.
Yes, to promote the golf course, and was about $2,000. All of these are things that are possibilities, things that we could use our hot tax for. To me, it's sad to have all that money just sitting there and it's not being able to use it for something. But these are options that are open to us. I did get an email from Councilman Sullivan asking me if these were not things that could be done in-house through our current marketing. And I suppose that they are. But these are things that Elaine has had dealings with. These are things that she has done. And it's my feeling that she could probably get this done quicker and easier without increasing the load on our staff.
And just to be clear, the point I wanted to make with Dick was, if Chris had his druthers as far as how to use marketing dollars, is this how he would use them? Or would he have higher priorities? I would just like to make sure that we checked with him first. And if there's stuff that's specific for the city in general, check with Josh and Meredith, for example, to see, do these fit with their priorities, or would they have higher priorities than this? That's the only comment that I was trying to make.
All right, I think that's very reasonable.
Yeah.
And my comment is that this is a starting point. You can go up and down from these prices all over the board. And I thought this would be a good variety of places to go, website and magazine, and that we can, it's a last in different areas. As far as production of what the site would be, if it's digital, I have photos and can do copy and work with Meredith and Chris on what they want to put on for tour.com. You have ideas or Meredith can production. Those are placement fees, not actual art.
Right.
It still qualifies for HOTF.
Got it. Yeah. And my main concern is do they have a list of these types of items that if they had the money, they'd spend it on that versus this? I'd just like the answer to that question.
And I provided Meredith a list of all the free listings on Austin 360, 512.com. So I know she's doing all, doing a lot of them on all of the.
Right.
Don't have the cost, but when they're free, you don't get as much. You're up there with a whole lot of other people.
Right.
How much, I can't remember, Josh, what the hot tax was last year.
It looks like right now, FY17 annually, I think we're at 127,000 is what we brought in this year. I believe to date, using the July financials, the expenditures were 64,000. So I think we're plus or minus 60,000 on the revenues over expenditures as of July 31st.
Okay. Well, I mean, if that's the case, then to Dick's point, then yes, all, and keep going, yeah, and to Councilman Sullivan's point, yeah, let's spend every bit of it that we can to drive more revenues here, right? But yeah, prioritize with what they want, but
Yeah.
I can support this.
Hotel 127,034, expenditures so far 64,092. So we're at 63, we're about halfway.
And that's for the year, Mayor, and then the balance is roughly 440 right now,
wow.
440,000 right now. So it's something, the beautiful thing about the hot tax is it gives you larger projects to focus on in terms of building a convention center. We could build a nice baseball stadium for a minor league baseball team.
A community center?
We could build, you could, and so that's,
Like the Iowa Cubs.
right, if we could get the Iowa Cubs to locate the Lago, we would be great. AAA baseball in Lago, be
You know
fantastic.
where my brain's going with that community center idea.
Right, well,
I don't
and
think community center
Oh.
is convention center.
it's gotta be
it
convention.
could be a convention center with a gym floor.
Right.
I think what I have.
We could build a skilled nursing center for you.
Right, to assisted facility.
Yes.
It would
But-
have to be convention or sporting or something that brings, folks in.
Overnight
A
stay.
A community center that is focused, solely for the use of the community would not qualify.
The point being, Mayor, I think we're on that. The
Yeah.
point was that you've got big picture items that you can use the money for, and then you've got pushing items, which is what we're at, because we don't expect to
Right.
build the big sporting venue. And so that's the thought process, that if we can do these things, the marketing to bring people to this area and increase our people in beds, then that's the benefits.
Could we do, say, build 4 baseball diamonds so that we could have baseball
Yeah,
competitions?
potentially, you can look at it, and potentially that's one of the things that's a little gray area with the hot text is, how do you drive regional tournament play at different levels? So that's one of the things that we're actually asking now is to see, so. We're in line with your thoughts.
I just want to say that media buy is suggested that helps Ron get his whole Texas view. And there's a lot of those magazines that are just distributed in Louisiana and places that they know people come to Texas. So it gets you Houston and everywhere. You can specialize those buys, but it does give us the whole state. And that, I think, is very useful because a lot of people don't take long vacations for 2 weeks anymore. It's weekends, long weekends. We could be able to capture those. Now, previously I did stress on the golf course itself in that year of 2016. The ad I ran in AAA Journey, one time we had golf and picnicking and bowling and something, and tried to make it to cover more people.
So Mayor, on this item, what we will do is, we'll do like the recommendation, we'll check back with Chris and with Meredith and get their feedback, and then we'll bring that back to council as well with the list of items for potential increase as well. And then we can follow back up with Elaine and look at some other options too. The next item, Mayor, the last item that we had written down is a CIP discussion, and then we had any other questions that we want to address. You did have a handout provided to you for the CIP this evening. Again, that shows it's 5 pages broken down into fiscal year, first fiscal year being the FY19, which is next year, and then the 5th year being the FY23. As I alluded to earlier, with the CIP, what we want to do is list the projects that are important for the years to come so that we have a planning tool also to use this for any potential funding sources that may look to us and say, do you have these projects if you're asking for money? So you'll see a couple of things that you see throughout, and that would be water and wastewater projects. You'll see street projects. You'll see parks projects. You list these items on here so that we have that mechanism, knowing we're going to do this. And as we've alluded to with the Cedar Point or Cedar Breaks Park, if it's not listed on the CIP, then we can't receive money from state agencies. So what our challenge is to take the items for next year, put a funding source with them, and then say, yes, we're going to do this project next year. If we're not going to put a funding source with it, then we need to be able to kick that project out to the next year. And so as we get to those final numbers, when we're looking at it at September 6th, we want council to be able to consider total dollars, total budget impact, and then look at the capital projects to see what needs to happen. And this is outside of the bond projects. The bond projects are already set in motion, and they go through until all those projects are completed.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to make one comment about the street allocation. I think it's wonderful that we do have a street allocation in here every year, and I saw that the Boggy Ford was in there as well. The only comment I want to make, and I'm to Suzanne and Ed and Ron, refresh my memory. When we had the street survey that was done, Gary presented it to us kind of a year and a half, 2 years ago, and I could swear that at the time he said the recommendation was you need to be spending $500,000 a year on your streets just to keep from getting worse.
Yeah.
Not to catch us up with everything that needs to be done, just to not get worse than you are today.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it could be that estimate was on the high side. You know, I think now that we've got Eric and Roy and Josh, we seem to be getting a lot more done for the dollar than we did before with Gary. But I would like maybe for staff to evaluate that and give us a feeling for, is that $500,000 enough to stay at least where we are and maybe even make some improvements? Or do we need to try and make that number larger?
Yeah, I remember that too, and I seem to think that when the last time we had that presentation, it was something like, if you wanted to get caught up completely, something like 1.5 for 8 years or something, if we wanted to get everything that needed to be fixed.
And that does not include the money for Barkay and
Right.
Boggy.
Those were separate. Those
Right.
were whole separate projects of $3+ million. So I think that we might need to think about a shift there. And I'm not trying to deprioritize anything on there, but it is, again, not to be a squeaky wheel. But, you know, if we're gonna look at spending $3 million on an irrigation system from the golf course, I sure would like to look at something equivalent for our streets. Right, I'm not, you know, it's just, yeah. I understand you might be going after grant money, and there's no grant money for streets, right? I will put that out there. We've been over this 1,000 ways to Sunday and tried to work everything we can there. There's no grant money for streets.
Mayor, the plan, so going back to what Councilor Sullivan's saying, the plan is for our team to do an update of what Gary provided. And the update's a little different. So if we're looking at the equipment next year and bringing some of those in-house, what Gary's proposal and analysis looked at is contracting everything out.
Right.
Okay.
Not to mention looking at some things that may not be the plan moving forward. Mm-hmm. So what we're proposing is doing our own internal update, providing for a rating system for these roads. Some are very easy, as you've received emails and gone to people's properties and looked at. If there's dirt only and one little patch of asphalt, that street's probably going to score an F. If we just recompleted the street, then it's probably going to be reconstructed. It's probably going to be an A. So we want to go back and do this updated plan and then bring that back to council. As I've said during the work sessions, this may be something that even though we have the allocation here, we may need to bring back to council in December, January, that says, hey, now we have a plan, we have a scoring system instead of just, well, Ed said his street's the worst and he's really, really loud, and so we listen to Ed.
Right.
And that's what happens. And so if you threaten us loudly, then we respond faster. But we don't want to do that. We want to have a standardized response so that people understand. what our system is in place. And you did that before, and you had an engineer, and the engineer was thinking it was all contract out. So if we can build things in-house, then yes. And then it goes back to Mayor Pro Tem's comment. The irrigation system is a fantastic one. That's, as an example, it's sitting here, but I don't think it should be staying on FY19.
Okay.
It should go somewhere else. I don't know where somewhere else is at. I just know somewhere else is not FY19.
Right.
Because no one sitting here can tell you where 2.1 million is going to come from for that. What we are doing is we're doing smaller replacements.
Right.
So we're not prioritizing it before, but if we leave this item here, then everyone will think that it's prioritizing beforehand. And I would think the same.
It's 21, 22, not 19.
It's there too.
Oh, is it
It's
both?
both
It's on all of
places.
them.
It's on all
Yeah.
of them.
You just
Oh,
keep
now I just,
replacing.
okay, sorry, I didn't.
Yeah,
You
I
just
know.
keep replacing the irrigation system until we get
There's
it right.
$6 million worth of irrigation replacement.
It's a heck of an irrigation system.
Holy smokes.
In the street repair, are you also looking at the piping system that's underneath those
Well,
streets?
that's the.
Well, and so that would go separate.
Okay,
Since we have the two, so we've got water distribution and wastewater collection. Those services have their own line item as well. And
Okay.
so what the best plan is, if we can do the street and we can do the lines at the same time,
at the same time.
then we actually have a plan instead of street
Right.
cutting everything, patching, and making it spotty and taking away the integrity. So
Right.
that's why we've got to commingle and plan a little more effectively than simply saying, hey, let's go hit this street, and then we'll come back in 6 months and do the infrastructure
Right.
that goes underneath it.
Do you have an ETA for when you think you would come back to council with an updated plan and?
Soon?
Okay. And hey, if it's 9 months from now, that's fine. I just was curious, when we might, see you guys come back.
And could potentially we have an update on our existing CIP at the same time, where we are,
Well,
status
we,
report?
what our request is as we approve the budget, we want to update the CIP and move some things around. And we have a meeting next week to look at this as well, some more. But we want to update the CIP throughout the year, which is not, we can do some updates so that we're more active in what the plan is. 9 months is a little farther out than where I want to go, but I do like the number. It's a safe number to say 9 months. It's not as scary.
Right, right.
Becoming a
But,
security.
maybe
I
it's
know.
maybe it's a quarter. Maybe it's 3-4 months of
Yeah.
going back through.
Fair enough.
Councilor Williams hits the nail on the head. One plan without the other is inefficient. And if we just get you the street scores, then we need to be able to look at, I think Councilor Smith's pointed out before, there are some lines that we can effectively remove from the system that may have been on the ground longer. And so if we can, schedule at the same time, then we can be more efficient in our operations. So
Okay.
we'd like to bring these back to you together to lay out an effective plan.
Okay.
As you know now, with water and wastewater, the only thing we're doing is trying to extend lines to make sure that the 10,000 people that are moving in have a place to
Right.
stay and have water and sewer, so.
Okay.
Have a comment.
Sir.
I was just, at the risk of becoming very unpopular, and prefacing because I hate paying property taxes as much as anybody, would it not make more sense to go ahead and instead of constantly saying, well, we can only do this, we can only do this, looking at our tax rate and saying maybe a couple of pennies on the tax rate would help to get more projects done sooner that we would all benefit from? I know that council's been probably great for the last 7-8 years, and obviously that is worthy, but I've lived here a long time and there's a lot of roads.
Yeah,
that still need a lot of
unfortunately,
work.
no, that is not a possibility because of the amount of revenue growth tied to the appraised values of your homes. It has already put us at a certain percentage of growth that we cannot add to anything.
Okay, so that's,
Well, no, I mean, we got that email from Tom Lawrence saying, what's our practical limit, and so we could go up. I think maybe a different answer would be, and we talked about this before in our budget workshop, we're generating a lot more money just off the 65 cents than we'll likely use. And so we may end up having a significant amount of money just because of the growth that we can throw towards streets and piping and that kind of thing without having to raise the rate.
obviously that would be a good thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And the citizens everybody is getting hit with enough of an increase with the appraisals. The last thing we need to do is add to that. And as long as we can get done effectively what we need to do for the city without increasing the burden on our citizens anymore, I think that's the way we want to go with it.
Makes perfect sense. Obviously I haven't seen the budget, but I've just seen over 20 years, a lot of things that remain status quo that would be better if they were fixed.
Yeah, no, we've had citizens come to us and say, hey, please raise my taxes 1 penny if that'll help. Well, we're at that point, where rollback and stuff starts coming into play, and, we're just.
But just having more rooftops and more areas to go ahead and draw revenue from rather than an empty lot is a huge benefit.
Exactly.
Hopefully that will continue.
Yeah.
I think the other thing I'd comment on is that in councils in the past, their priority wasn't infrastructure. I think that's changed. And so I think you're seeing a lot of folks up here who are interested in more money to streets and water and wastewater and that kind of thing.
Yeah. And this council's strongly pushing economic growth. So retail and sales tax dollars is really going to make the difference in this community as opposed to ad valorem.
That makes
So.
sense to me too.
Yeah.
And Mayor, back to wrapping that point right there up is what we'll see is on that funding source, we'll have some projects that could still be listed under bond dollars. We'll have projects that could be funded through impact fees. You see that on here. We'll have some that could be funded through general fund or utility. And then that other added factor, as both you and Councilor Sullivan pointed out, is the next funding source would be capital improvements fund. So when we're earmarking these dollars back over there and we say, hey, let's knock out this $100,000 in streets right now.
Yeah.
With our what we know is projects we need to focus on, we'll have those dollars earmarked into that fund, then we'll transfer them over, not taken from a general fund reserve. So we're at that wonderful place where we're going to be able to move these dollars around. So what we ask before our next discussion on the budget, which is September 6th, is for council to look at these years and from your past knowledge or anything you've heard or planning for the future, just look and see if there are items that we're not addressing in here that staff may have missed. And if there are items, you'll see something as simple under the miscellaneous item as a Lago Fest backup generator. We've used that as a couple examples. Those are simple things to think about after your generator goes out. So we want to be a little more forward thinking and put these items into the CIP plan moving forward, and then we'll figure out how we're going to fund them as a council makes those final decisions.
Well, immediate feedback from me is that I think we should, at least in the short-term years, look at, if available, upping the streets budget. And of course, I prioritize the park. I'm sure I'm not the only person up here.
I'd say the streets and our water and sewer line infrastructure both should have priority. I will go along with the fact that we should try to get some money put back for the parks so that as we come up to grants in the near future, we have funds to make sure that we can, again, meet those funds.
I will, yeah, to your point about the sewer lines, it's been a while since we've had an update on that status, so it's hard for me to know the shoreline sewer line and the lift station generators. I don't know where they are in the status. We dealt with so many emergency water issues over the last 2 years. I don't know if these are nice to have or emergency issues again.
Well, we had put together when we did our water conservation plan that we had about 20 miles of PCV class pipe in the ground that's at end of life right now. And it's about 20 miles. So I think that needs to be put in the 18-19 plan. If you want a hole for 4 miles of galvanized pipe and 2 miles of ductile iron pipe, once you get those 3 types of pipe replaced, then we're probably going to be good on pipes for about the next 15 years. So if we can make a concerted push on those 3 types of pipe get those behind us, and we got kind of a pretty good runway in front of us that we shouldn't have to come back barring a failure, that we shouldn't have to really address this for probably at least a decade for sure. So I would like to see something done to accelerate existing pipe replacement. And then once you get those replaced, then you should be clear on your roads on top of them.
Yeah, do we have a map to know?
No, we need that extra person in GIS to help
To do
fill in the
that.
blanks to
Yeah.
give us we have ROM estimates on them right now. What we don't have is precise streets. We have them on paper. They're just not in a computer file for us to sort and search and come up with some analysis on. So somebody has to go through paper files to figure all that. Also, our automatic water meter readers that we have right now, those were started back in the 2012-2013 timeframe. And so I'm not sure what the lifespan on those are, but I'm sure that at least not this year, but maybe next year, we may have to start thinking about either upgrades or replacements there. Keep in mind, if you don't do that, you're going to be sending a crew of 4 out, touching every meter on every house every month. That's your alternative. So we've already got them in the ground and people are adding to it, but there may be a time for either an upgrade or replacement coming probably 2 years out. So I'm looking for those in this plan and I don't see them at all. So what I'm asking for is, can we put them on the plan? Then we can come up with some dollars and then we can figure out if we can afford it. Also, our Encode system, this is our financial systems. I don't know when the last time we upgraded those systems are, but I don't know how well that thing chit-chats with Public Works. But there's a heavy interface, or should be a heavy interface between Public Works and our financials. And we may have to take some upgrades over there. When we talk about infrastructure, we have the companion problem of the financials to go along with them. And so we may need to look at some kind of upgrade there. I'm thinking maybe 2019, 2020 for something like that. And then also long-term water loss trends. Right now we get monthlies on those, but I don't get any trending on those unless I go back and pull every month and plot them myself. So water loss is key. The new HDPE pipe are probably the best leak pipes that we have around. And so as we put more and more of those into the ground, we should have less and less water loss in the system. I would like to say that I did talk to our representative on the Region K Planning Board last month, and he said that these pipe replacements that we're looking at may be eligible for either Region K planning funding available to us. Now, it may not be 0%, but it may be 2%, which may be better than 4%. That we may have some funding available in there with possible forgiveness in there as well. And that would be a good project that shows a staged implementation over multi-years that we could probably get some money for, but we would have to run it through our channels, Region K and Texas Water Development Board. But there is a process in place for that to go through. We just haven't talked to them yet to find out, even just start the discussion, even if we don't have a plan in place, at least we've got some concepts in place that maybe we could go forward with all that. And then lastly, I know I just signed a check for zebra mussels, and by the way, the zebra mussels were clear. But that doesn't mean it's not going to resurface, during the next mating season that we have. So, and I can't see that in the budget. It's probably buried in recurring somewhere. But zebra mussels represent a risk, and probably not a capital risk, but maybe an operational risk to the city that we probably need to have some kind of pot of money set aside for that, so that if we have to move on it quickly, we don't have to go through the banker, if you will, to do something like that. So those are some of the kinds of things I did not see in this plan that I would like to see included. I'm not sure about the timing of it just yet, but can we at least get it on the list and then we can figure out where it goes after that?
Ron, is zebra mussels easy to get into our intake?
Well, they're microscopic when they start, and then once the water temperatures and the mating conditions are right, they can literally explode on you. And when they do, they start latching onto each other, and they kind of form like a beehive effect.
Yeah.
Cluster.
On the end of your pipes, on your intake pipes.
But
which
is there anything
represents a
that could be
risk.
done to weaken that situation from
Well,
happening?
there's chemicals you can put on the lines where maybe they can't grab as well. And you could wipe them off maybe a little bit easier, and I can't remember the name, it's a real long.
Yeah, but that's going into our water supply.
That would affect the intake.
Yeah, so it's, I mean, I think the lowest environmental impact is to send divers down and have them scrape them off, right? But that's expensive. So I think that you're right, that we need to have a pot of money there.
I don't know how much money, if they explode, is gonna get very expensive very quickly. But as long as we're in a containment mode, we're probably safe.
Yeah.
But if
I just
the
didn't know if
conditions
there
are
was some
right,
sort of dome that could be, that would allow water to go in, but.
I think they pass through any filters
Really?
that you can put on there in the initial stage. Once they start growing, you may be correct. They may be able to stop it then. But in the beginning stages, those things can.
Well,
probably
full
go
grown,
for-
they're only about the size of a pea anyway.
Yeah, Dick brought some in the last council meeting that he found on the shore.
Yeah, go ahead.
They started off microscopic. When you see, when they had the Bassmasters tournament over here, they had some video. When they start doing their thing, there's just a plume of stuff that comes out. It comes out just as a milky looking something or other, and it's thousands upon thousands of eggs.
Got it.
Those settle and grow, and they tend to grow in clusters. They don't spread out, they just stay together.
Got it.
And then they can become a real problem. There are marine biologists, chemists, people of all types all over the nation that are working on this because it has become a problem across the biggest part of the southern part of the United States and up the Mississippi River. So
Got it.
hopefully something will eventually come along. They'll come up with something, but we're not there. And right now, most effective way to get rid of them is simply to go down and scrape them off.
And Mayor, this item in particular is something we're working regionally with everyone else here. The beautiful thing about it is anyone that has intake, we're working with them. Cedar Park, we've talked to them about their plans. Austin, we've talked to them about their plans. You wouldn't see it in a CIP plan because as Councilor Weatherly says, it's not something we're going to add into the capital side. It's in the operations. So we do have money allocated for the zebra mussels in our allocation for operation and maintenance because it is a standard operational procedure. We go down, send divers. You could go down and check it out for us sometime. And if you got anything, you can clean it off. So that's why I sent that last report showing that intake showed negative.
Right.
But we monitor and make sure because that would definitely impact it.
I had two more. One, I know in the library, in their long-range plan has expansion, additional meeting space and other things like that. So, and I don't know that it necessarily needs to be within the next couple of years, but if it could be somewhere on the plan, just so we acknowledge it. And then the second is just more of a question. Do we have any IT capital needs that the city has? Upgrades, whether it be hardware, software, whatever, other than the Encode system, that need to be on the capital improvement plan?
We do, yes, sir. We have a report and a breakdown for things that we need to implement on the here. Dave's already given us those items. We just got to get them onto the CIP for those items. And things like Encode are pretty simple. Those actually will fall into the operations as well because we do Encode updates often and whenever they come out and we need to get them. What we have to do is we got to make sure that the systems are as Councilor Smith said, that they're talking together so that we're fully utilizing the system. Right now, I don't even think we're using all that system. So those are all inside the operations
Windows
side.
10 may affect it as well. So when you fix the other computers, there may be a spillover impact.
Probably will affect it.
Oh, here's one more. Bronco wastewater line. Can you know about that one?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I have 4 unfunded projects that you could put on there. Kind of goes with Suzanne. Rec Center, Community Arts Center, Performing Arts Center, and
Thought we had those at the schools.
and Town Square. Their performances are at the school. They're looking for storage and rehearsal space. The performing arts are. So they're looking for, you know, kind of a collaboration of private and public facilities to use for presenting their arts and working, holding classes, and that's what they're looking for. And then they would do, of course, their performances where they have an actual stage.
It would be interesting with some of the things we've talked about for new city hall, if some of that couldn't be incorporated in that plan.
Yeah, that has been discussed.
Huh. Great minds.
I got those.
But I just wanted to make sure they got on this list.
We'll move all these items, Mayor, everything that's been mentioned, we'll move these onto the plan and get that back to you via email so that you're ready to have this discussion at September 6th. Great. Those are the items we had listed, Mayor. If there are questions on that, on the budget that we need to have answered now, we have time.
You did say earlier you're working on both the transportation study, trying to get it fit into, and then there was another one. What was the other one?
Yes.
There was a second study.
The one that you're right. I don't know what.
Water rates.
Water rate.
Water rates. So those two are part of your.
Yeah, now we're gonna put into the budget
Okay.
proposal for September 6th.
Okay, and then you and I talked about wayfinding signs. Is that somewhere in the budget?
Yeah.
It's not in the budget, but it will come in the year. It'll be a proposal that we need to complete an estimate proposal and a couple plans, have that talked about by our community, and then we'll come back and develop a number. So I think that's another good one to come back to.
I love the Wayfair signs. I would also like to look at just the street signs and making something a little more representative of the Lago Vista community than the ultra green bright things, right? We might be able to step that up. I'm just saying, it's a wish list, right?
It's a wish list. There's still this thing called uniform traffic code, so we can only do what we're legally allowed to do. But we can put stickers illegally on there and make it.
There are prettier signs than what we have.
Let me write that down. Prettier
signs.
I got it. Put that under Mayor Pro Tem. I got it covered. Okay. And that would come in part of our street plan, actually.
Yeah.
The sign updates and the street plan would all go hand in hand.
I jest about that, but Mr. Mayor brought up a need for additional stop signs too throughout our residential communities, so it kind of all falls into the same bucket to me.
Well, and when I was on vacation, there's several little, they're all little HOAs in this little thing, but they have these solar powered little signs. I don't know what they can't be that expensive because they were just little, but it said, "Your speed is, your speed is." And for some certain areas of our town, those would be fantastic.
Would they violate the dark skies ordinance?
No.
They don't actually.
Do they have a maximum?
No, they're solar.
Yeah, what did I call them?
They're lights though.
Oh, yeah, but no, they're LED digital, and it just says, your speed is, and it just has a number that pops up. So you could tell, because going through those residential neighborhoods, the people that were trying to get to the beach, they didn't want to get on Beach Road because everybody's trying to check into their cabin at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So they're all cutting through the neighborhoods and stuff. Well, these neighborhoods all put these signs, your speed is.
Nice
And
Thunderbird.
that would be.
Did it help?
Yes. They did help.
If nothing else, they know they're going too fast.
Yeah.
Josh, I did remember one more thing, and I don't know if it's more for the capital or your operational, but remember we talked about the addition to wastewater filtering capability to go to type 1 versus the type 2 now?
Yes.
Is that in the CIP? I didn't see anything that specifically referenced it.
Not on the CIP, but we do have it, and we have the numbers. It should be finalized by our final September 6th.
And is that something you're going to try and put into the regular budget, or it's going to go in CIP?
well, we'll realize it in both, actually, just depending on what kind of dollars we're gonna put towards it.
Okay.
I don't know what that final number is. We do know that there's two funding sources that could potentially help us with it. You know, we were talking about a $500,000 figure to make that happen, and potentially 100,000 over here, and maybe 100,000 over here.
Okay.
So depending on if we don't have that funding source allocated, it'll go into both.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
The last one I had, I've talked about with Chief before, and I was talking with Councilman Weatherly earlier, that emergency water supply, which would be a very inexpensive thing to do a rainwater collection of a large-scale emergency water supply off the police station.
Got it.
You think?
I know.
Inexpensive.
Yeah, I do. I paid $2,500 for my 25,000 gallon tanks, each of them.
Inexpensive in my book.
I got 50,000 gallons of tank water for $5,000.
So Mayor, what I'll do is
We'll pick them up myself.
we'll get all these in there, present it back. That's all I have for that section.
I have a question.
Never mind,
Josh.
just kidding.
How much would it cost to replace street signs on the street where the name is misspelled, like Lindbergh?
I do know the number.
How do you know it's misspelled?
Because I know how Lindbergh is actually supposed to be spelled.
You don't think there's two ways to spell Lindbergh?
Well, these are named after people that we know historically. That's how we know their names. What is the street that you live on?
Henry?
No.
Farragut?
Yeah, that name is wrong also. It's Farragut, not Farragut. That's Admiral Farragut, that street's named for. Anyway, I'm just curious about what it would cost to replace those.
We can replace them. I just don't know if we'll know which ones they are. We might have to ride around with you.
I'll ride around and I'll tell you which ones they are.
You get in the car with Councilor Williams and check this out.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it really?
None of it is.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll get that. I'll email that.
Okay.
I'll get you a number and we'll look at what we've got. It's all part of that street replacement. That's it, Mayor.
That's it.
Next item.
All right.
Executive session.
Item number 10, we will convene into executive session pursuant to sections 551.071, advice of counsel, 551.072, real property, 551.074, personnel, section 551.087, economic development, Texas Government Code, and section 1.05, Texas disciplinary rules of professional conduct regarding A, pending or threatened litigation pertaining to cause number D-1-GN-16-002483, Villa Montechino LP versus City of Lago Vista, Travis County 200th District Court. B, consultation with legal counsel concerning possible real estate acquisition, management, or divestiture and attendant matters thereto. C, consultation with legal counsel concerning airport property. D, consultation with legal counsel regarding contractual claims or possible claims or charges, contractual modifications, and questions related thereto. E, consultation with legal counsel concerning the participation of the City of Lago Vista in the Cap Metro Transportation Authority. And F, consultation with legal counsel and deliberate economic development incentives for projects located within the City of Lago Vista. And we convene at 8:28 p.m. We'll see you in 5 minutes. Don't go away.
So I went through them and read them real quick.
That would be awesome if it were 5 minutes. That would make me happy.
Our list keeps growing. We're to an